Hello everybody, good morning and welcome back to Reaper Pro Tips with me, your host, Anne, and disembodied hands, Quindy, Justin, and sometimes even John. How are you all? Hello, hello, hello. Yep, there's movement. I'm here. More or less. You guys, I'll just let you do whatever. Hi, Captain Clover, thank you. Yeah, last time we spent time on getting the face really more to look like a wild hair is what I wanted to have. So we're going to do the rest of the fur today and maybe start on colors. So we're gonna pop quiz you guys on some color theory. Yes, we are, because remember we're using rich leather with just a touch of black and brown in it. And I think I was bringing it up with a blonde hair triad, as I recall. Blonde hair. There's my blonde hair. So bringing it up with kind of that. That's kind of our triad, our makeshift triad that we're working with. So, given... oh no, I'm sorry you were in bed most of the day, Cornico. So, my question for chat, yes, I'm springing this on you right away, is what is our starting color? Like, if you had to pick one, what is our starting color on the color wheel? What did we start with? What does this count as? It's an easy one if you think about it. What color does this count as on the color wheel? No. What's this? What's this, guys? How much yellow is in this color when we add white to it? Is that an orange? Or is that a yellow? Yeah, see? Yellow. Think about it. And if you wonder, if you are having a brown issue, if you're having a brown, then you pop a little bit of that color into your palette or onto your parchment paper or whatever the heck else you want to do, and you add white to it. And you mix it up, and you look at what it is. So you are right in that it could be an orangey color, but it's also very yellow. And if I put the blonde hair in a drop next to it, they're almost exactly the same. Orange is itself, Shadow Raven. It can be orange, red orange, or yellow orange. But it is orange. Primaries and secondaries both, not just primary colors here. You guys are just over the moon today. Yeah, I painted, or not the Masquerade Ball one. I painted the Bourbon Street one to be more like a masquerade. Unless that's what they renamed her. Back in those days, when Bourbon Street Sophie first came out, she's the one carrying the mask. So I don't know if that's the one, Ron. But back in those days, in order to afford to fly everybody in for ReaperCon, I actually arranged for each artist to paint one of the Sophies of that year, and we auctioned them off. And the money that we got through those sales helped offset the costs of bringing artists in. This is before we started doing paid classes for the cons, so we had to offset the costs somehow. And I painted a Sophie for that, and I actually, because the Bourbon Street Sophie comes with the lamppost, I actually put her in Narnia. So I did a backdrop that was freehand painted, that was a snowy forest with the lamppost there, and painted her in winter queen colors and stuff like that. Actually, one of my favorite paint jobs I think I ever did for Reaper. I no longer have pictures of it. But I love Narnia. I love Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe was always one of my favorite books as a kid. So that's how I did it. As I recall, I used violet red for the dress color to make her stand out. And the background was all in blue grays like Snow Shadow and Twilight Blue and all that. That's how I remember it. Oh, okay. Masquerade Sophie is different then. It's not Bourbon Street. Bourbon Street is the one I painted. I have not painted any of the later Sophies at all. Because I was no longer a staff painter at that point. I was full-time in the paint department. So, all right. Yes, 2006. Back then I was painting. All right. So we have determined by adding white to the color that it is actually a yellow. It could be a slightly orangey yellow. You could go with yellow orange if you want. If you want to call it a yellow orange, you can. But this is our starting color. The point of this exercise was to emphasize to you guys that when you make a judgment call on a starting color, even if it is a neutral, it does have a color profile. It's not just brown. Brown is a muted orange or a muted yellow, and sometimes a muted red, like with ruddy leather. So you'll find things on that range. And yes, usually they do have a little bit of orange in it. So those of you who said orange, you weren't far off. But yes, so this is the exercise I want to put you guys through this morning. And some of you have no excuse because it's early for me, but it's not early for anybody else. You all are later in the day than me, so don't tell me you're not awake yet. You've all had coffee. Yeah, I like Bourbon Street. It's a good model. But anyway, yeah, so this is the point. So we're starting with yellow. So now that you know that, I want you guys to tell me what color you want her clothing to be. Specifically her blouse. We could go neutral with the pants, but I'm curious to see what color you want her blouse to be. So what color do you think? Let's go up a little bit more. There we go. A little bit more. There. If you have a color wheel, you can take it out and look at it. There are a couple different ways you can go here, right? A couple different ways you can go here. All right, so interesting question. Okay, interesting answers here. Okay, so seeing a lot of blue, and that would put us in, like, blue-violet is the exact complement. The reason people are saying blue-violet, if you look at the complement arrow here on your color wheel, and you go to, say you call this a yellow-orange, then your exact complement is blue-violet. If you are counting our fur as a yellow, as I tend to a little bit more, but technically you can go with either of these, then blue is then your primary triad. If you go lavender, then you're more in the yellow. You're sliding it more toward yellow. You're still in the complementary range, though. Thoramel, you are answering. That's why that explains your answer, because you didn't actually get the introduction to this lesson. Oh, teach you to be late. We determined what color this is. It's a very tiny wheel. It's a pocket wheel. This is the scale 75 version, but you can just get the pocket color wheel from Amazon for like $2. Next time you make an Amazon order, just order it. It's just a couple bucks. But you could go other ways, right? So blue is an obvious call, and a lot of us do reach for kind of the obvious choices, right? So like if we're dealing with this, going for a violet or lavender or something like this, it's complementary. If you count it as yellow, then going blue gives you a secondary triad. That's this triangle right here. So the triangle, if we line it up right with what we need it to be lined up with, say it's on the edge of yellow, and yes, you can do this. You can put it just on the edge between yellow, orange, and yellow. And then you know that you need a slightly greenish blue if you're going to go with a triad, or you can go with a violet red, which is, if you recall, kind of the color I went with the interior of her ears. Yes, rabbit brown is actually yellow, maybe with a hint of orange. Bye, Shadow Raven. Have fun. So essentially, when I'm thinking about color, this is where I start. I usually look at the triads, and here, as you all pointed out, when you're on the line, then it gets interesting, because then you go over here and you're like, oh, it's kind of between turquoise and blue. So then one color you could go with, one second, let me find it. Oh, come on. Oh, come on. Seriously? But you could go with something like Surf Aqua. Now, whoever said blue-gray earlier was very smart, because, as y'all can see, our rabbit color here is not a pure yellow-orange. It's not bright at all. It's very muted. And so that means that we do want to mute our other colors a little bit. On the other hand, this is also a brown. Browns tend to be very neutral, and so they don't fight a lot with other colors unless you go too close to them. Good, Silver Tongue. Yeah, I think this is the best well palette. If you're going to use a well like this, I think it's the king of well palettes for miniatures, because you can use such little amounts of paint in it and water and still get a nice deep well. Not talking freehand on this model at all. Not taking design input, trying to make you guys think. So, all right. So we have a few choices, right? And we don't have to like stick to a bright color, although we can on this. And the reason that we can on this rabbit is because it is very brown, right? And so the more you go brown, the less, like if she was very, very blonde, we'd have to treat her like a muted yellow. But because she's mostly brown, and brown is more of a neutral, we're able to use relatively bright colors with her. This is kind of the rule to remember, is if you have a muted color, you do have to mute other things, at least a little. Like we couldn't use super bright, clear bright colors on her. It would look wrong. But if we mute the other color, even with just a little bit, even with just adding a tiny touch of its complement or tiny touch of white, or we just use a red or something that's not a pure red, or a blue that's not strictly a pure blue, we can do that. She is technically a rogue, though I like her as a ranger, but I do not want that to influence our color choices. I am actually not reaching for a character appropriate color suggestion here. I am purely working with color. Purely working. So do not assume anything based on character class when you are looking at colors. When you are doing your own figures, it makes a lot of sense to do that. In this case, green is one of the colors that is not good for her. It's not as good because green is right next to our happy yellow and yellow-orange right here on the color wheel. So if our model is this, here is not an ideal choice for our clothing on this hare, unless we make it very, very different. And to make it different, the only way to make a green very different from our yellow and yellow-orange here would be to take it very dark or very light. Now, her fur has some very dark elements already, so possibly if we did go with a green, we'd have to go very light. But you guys are getting ahead of things. I'm trying to see, this is the problem. This is why Twitch streams are not an ideal teaching forum. Because in reacting to the crowd, it's almost impossible to lay out a lesson like in ways that help you to learn better. How about that? As long as it's a porcelain palette, it doesn't matter. But you want the porcelain. You want the porcelain. That's the most important parts of this palette are smaller wells, ones that are around your finger size, and porcelain. So easy clean. That's funny, Korniko. But yeah, and that's why it's inefficient. But I wanted to talk about colors today. So, all right, we're going to throw it all in the air, and I will cease trying to teach you guys color theory. This is why I love my Patreon, because I can actually lay out things in an organized manner that might actually stick in your heads at some point, where you don't have to watch 50 zillion hours of video to finally get that exclamation point moment. But anyway, so now knowing what you know, what color is her blouse? What color you guys want to do her blouse? I want some suggestions, and we'll put up a poll. We'll cease trying to be explanatory about it. We still see a lot of votes for blue. Or at least a big vote for blue from Big Apple. A Big Apple vote for blue. How about other colors? And thank you for the Patreon link, Quindy. I'm actually about to put together the $5 PDF today. Start working on it. I'm excited about it. It's about the copper NMM triad and how to use it. I have to find a good model for it. I've got red, violet. I've got blue. I've got pink. So I've got pretty much a blue, gray, sky blue, red, violet, pink. Hold on. I'm going to write these down. Any others? We have blue, gray, sky blue, red, violet, and pink. I reserve the right to add some darker tones to the sky blue. Sky blue, blue. I asked folks not to actually do it that way, It's Rock. She's actually a rogue, but you could make her a ranger or anything. But I actually asked just purely for colors, so I'm not looking to change her colors based on her environment. I'm just looking to paint a cool character and not necessarily to paint a ranger. Although I did just bring up the fact that green is actually not a great choice for her because on the color wheel, the greens are right next to her actual color. Her color counts in kind of this range. It's a brown, but if you go back and watch the start of the stream, you'll see that we identified it as a yellow to yellow orange once you really break it down to color wheel. And that's kind of, I showed people how kind of to figure out what your brown is. But anyway, green is right next to that. And colors that are next to each other on the color wheel will fight. They're not the great choices for each other. The way to change that is to go very light or very dark with the other color to get contrast. But I wasn't really like, we could go that way. If we did, we'd almost certainly have to go with a very light green. Is that because you just came in, Skelsey? Because that's why we did the intro. Like I said, I did an intro section in this video. Oh, no problem, Itrock. Yeah, but that's why green would be one of the last colors I would choose for her because it's so close to her color on the color wheel. And if you ever watch any of my other videos on color or attend a class on color that I do at ReaperCon, if you don't want to have color malfunctions, the easiest way to do it is to choose colors that are away from your main color. So whatever your main color on the model is, and in this case, she's got an awful lot of fur that we're going to be highlighting up with blonde hair, which is a yellow. So in this case, that means choosing stuff that's around here. Trying not to choose colors that are right next to the yellow and yellow-orange on the color wheel. So, how is my color wheel so clean? Because I only use it conceptually and I don't actually get it out while I'm painting. I already know the answers while I'm painting. So yeah, so that's basic color theory and color choosing for you guys. When it comes down to that, you always go for contrast, and contrast means not choosing colors that are close to each other on the color wheel. Now, there are plenty of models that violate that rule, and they use what's called an analogous color scheme. And an analogous color scheme is going to be when you choose a lot of colors that are close to each other and you paint just in those. So if you had orange and yellow and maybe a tiny touch of like yellow-green, then you'd be painting in an analogous color scheme because you'd only be using these colors. But the minute you jump over and you add a blue-violet or something, you're no longer painting in an analogous color scheme. Analogous color schemes are tricky, and they rely very heavily on neutrals and on lights and darks in order to differentiate the colors. Because if you don't have enough contrast, then it all just looks like a muddle. I've been doing a lot of metallics, and I'm not a big fan of doing that if I want to have a shiny fabric, Active Minds. So that's something you can do if you want to suggest a silk or a satin and you want to do it kind of the easy way. It's not a technique that I've enjoyed, so it's one that I probably wouldn't use. But if you did it, you could add a bit of like, what I would do if I was going to do it is I would take maybe clear red or heraldic red or blood red, and I would add a little bit of pearl white, which is 9100, which is our white metallic. That's a way you can make your own silks and satins. And that would make a pink, and then I would probably shade that with the red and bring it up with more pearl white. So you could absolutely do that. However, that limits us as far as then everything else that might be metallic on the model does need to be metallic. So any fixtures on the crossbow here, we would have to make in metallics and not in non-metallic metal. Okay, so, but yeah, I'm not feeling the metallics on her. Not with how she doesn't really have any other. She has a belt buckle, I guess. So we could go metallic. Although she has a vest and a shirt. So I'm asking specifically about the blouse color. Yeah, I don't know. I just don't. I've never really liked that treatment. If I want to do something that looks like silk, I'll do it. I'll paint it that way, and use the thing. But yes, that's totally a valid technique, and you can absolutely do that to get a kind of a satin or a silk effect on your cloth. Yeah. All right, so let's put up, these are really the choices that came up earlier on. So we have blue gray, sky blue blue, red violet, and pink. Quindy, can you toss a pole up? I guess you could also put purple on there. It's kind of the easy answer because it's the complementary color for yellow, but so these 5 choices. But yeah, I always ask for suggestions, but I do reserve the right to say, oh. Do you have it, Quindy? Okay, good. Thank you. Okay, guys, what color for Bunny's blouse? Pulls up. The blouse is her sleeves and a little bit showing here at the front. So it's a color that's going to be right up against her fur. Then she's got a little corset or bodice on. It's just actually a bodice. And then she's got her little blousey pants. And we might give her stripy pants or something. I don't know. I haven't decided yet. Maybe pattern pants. I don't know. She's kind of fancy, I think. Like, I think she's a girly girl, but maybe not. Let's see. People are voting for Bunny's colors. I need to look. All right. Ooh, it's a race between red, violet, and blue gray. Ooh, come on, everybody. Vote, vote, vote. Doesn't matter to me, Silvertongue. I don't care. I'm not choosing her colors based on that. I mean, I just painted a halfling assassin in indigo and pink. So, go figure. I'm not trying to actually have her character class, because any class these days can use a crossbow, a light crossbow. So you really, really could make her anything. She has no other weapon. But I'd rather people just pick a fun color and not worry about it. And there are plenty of times I will choose a color based on character class, but I don't want to be constrained with this. Usually our characters have obvious character classes, and so I have to kind of go with that flow. But this one I think is very ambiguous, and so I like that. So vote then if you want to. If you haven't voted yet, Silvertongue. The poll should be at the top of the chat. Make sure you vote for your color. So far, red violet is winning with blue gray a close second. Yeah, she could be anything. That's what I kind of like about her. Like, Ron had to throw a character class on there. No, I don't want to go there, Rat Dabber. Like I said, I reserve the right. I definitely take feedback from you guys every once in a while, but I reserve the right to say, not feeling it, and Easter's right out. Easter or cartoon is right out because we've already painted her very naturalistically. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, like I liked it when D&D made that a thing where you could give a wizard a light crossbow or something. Because, you have one freaking spell at first level. So it was nice to be able to do something, right? You guys are just wacky today. Like, it's so funny because I came to work like all serious and say, all right, color theory, whir, and you guys are like, Easter bunnies, exploding chickens. That's how chat be like that today. I'm noticing. So have your fun. That's fine. Looks like, we have a tie. We have an exact tie between red, violet, and blue, gray. Does that mean I have to use both? I can use both. I just have to use the blue, gray on a different part of her. I'm not rolling dice. I'm going to make a choice. Uh-oh, somebody punched red violet up. You spelled that wrong, Cursed, if you were going to be really punny. Yeah. Oh, everybody, it's coming out. It's coming down. It's coming down to the line. We have one vote up for red violet over blue gray. Yeah, she is. I know. I didn't ask for input on the vest, though. I just wanted you guys to choose one color. And then everything else will be planned around that. Constraints. Anne puts constraints on things. Violet red. And maybe. Yes, it is worse than high school students. I know. Everybody's wonky. Like yesterday, silence. I felt like I was like streaming in silence. The stream of silence. But yes, then today everybody is absolutely exploding. Hey, Eric, you missed all the chaos. Quick vote on a color for Bunny's shirt. The poll is up. You have like 5 seconds. Yeah, but don't think about everywhere else. We're just trying to pick a color for her shirt. Red violet wins. Okay, cool. And let me take a look. Does it give the breakdown of the rest of them? I know that blue-gray was or gray-blue was the next one. So, okay, let us rock that then. We could also go, I'm going to go that, and where is my blue liner anyway? There it is. So there. Okay. So we are then going with a primary triad. So to go back to our happy color wheel and to put our little triangle on the appropriate spot, we have boop, boop. This big triangle is your triadic. So yellow to orange yellow. And then with the blue, it wants us to put a little bit of green in it if we can. And here with the red violet, going a bit more toward the red side, which we definitely have in violet red. So that is our triadic color scheme. Now we could go and push that. You can always grab like your two primaries here and then slide this one a little bit, one way or the other. So that, and I've done that before. So you could go more toward a blue purple, or you could go more toward a teal, although I'm not as into teal on this. I don't like it because it shifts more toward that yellow. So you can switch it, but if you skidded it, I think I'd skid it more that way. Keep it over on this side of things. That is my opinion. Oh yeah, I forgot to book my artist room. I just don't know at this point how my timing is going to come down around ReaperCon. I probably should book a room anyway. I probably should put that on my list. 1 second. Let me put it on my thing. There, it'll be on my to-do list today. I'm sure the block will sell out super fast, but I always kind of end run around that. All right. Excellent. Alrighty. Well then, we've got 2 things to work on today. We've got to work on our fur and our blouse. So let's get to it. There are choices that you make, Big Apple. So if you are going with a complementary color scheme, you use the direct line. That's why it says complementary right here. So these are all these shapes are valid color schemes if you know where you're starting from. That's why you need to know where you're starting from. So anytime, so if we wanted to, let's look at the big picture here. So let's just say, there. This is probably confusing. Let's just go with yellow-orange, for example. So let's say our bunny we started out and said, for sure, we are this brown is a yellow-orange. So We can use the big triangle, which is the Triadic Scheme, and that lets us do the red-violet, and the other one is the blue-green. And you only need to choose 2 of these. Like, if you've got this, you choose that one, or you can choose all of them. And they will all work together. But if you also see this square here, you could also choose a red-orange, a blue-violet, and a blue-green. And that would be a valid color scheme if you did the rectangular tetrad. If you wanted to go with the narrow split complementary, you could go yellow-orange, yellow-green, in which case this would need to be very light. This yellow-green would need to go very, very light or very, very dark. And then you could go with violet or purple on the other side. So any of these can be used to build a working color scheme. And you don't need to choose all of them. Like, I could just go with yellow, orange, and violet and knock out the yellow, green, and not use it. I would be fine. That's how you use that part of the color wheel. The competition is only in person, Silvertongue, I think, unless we're doing an online one along with the MSP Open. But they need to... usually our deadline, I think, is Friday night or Saturday morning. Okay, so you get it now, Big Apple? Good deal. Yes, that's how you use it. But you first, so always when you use your color wheel, you're first, and this is what I tell people in color class, choose one color to start with. You must do that. You can roll a dice randomly if you really want to. You know, you can do that. Or do a random number generator if you have a spreadsheet with all of your colors in it. But you will choose one color to start with. And if you choose a white or a black, you have copped out. Go back and choose a color to start with. And then consult your triangles and squares and choose your second color based on your options. That is one of many ways a color wheel can be utilized. I also use the grayscale a lot. So the peak of which triangle? Like here doesn't really count. You're doing the split. So if you want to pretend that she's more yellow, then you'd have yellow, green, and red, violet. What you could do, I feel like she's on the edge. So I feel like you're going to be going with a green, yellow, green. You could do that. You can also invert it. Robin is correct. And do your split with blue, violet, red, violet, and yellow. Or if you have an orange, yellow, you can point it to that. You can do it any way. It really doesn't matter. Right, but it doesn't matter, Robin. You can do it any of those ways. It works. So yeah, you can put your main color at the top point, but you don't have to. You can invert that. Quote unquote main color. With this model, she's got big color blobs on her pants and on her, like, you know, her bodice and stuff like that. So I don't feel constrained to make the main point of my color at the yellow. You can. Many people would. But the downside, okay, so the reason I wouldn't do that, let's actually bring that up. The reason that I went away from thinking that way is because this is a really muted color. And many people won't even register this as being a yellow-orange. They'll register it as being a brown, a neutral. So if I take that main, quote-unquote, main point, and I just make sure one of my secondary points are pointed at the yellow-orange, then I've got more of a purple, yellow, green scheme. Or I can go the other way. And I can go with a red, orange, blue scheme. So that is why I gravitated toward the upside down split on this one, because this is not a strong yellow-orange. It's a stealth yellow-orange. Does that make sense? You could still make it a main color and you could work everything off of it. It really does not matter. Yeah. I mean, often that will happen with team colors, but they actually use, I think, more of a heraldic color scheme sometimes, where they're going with a metal and a color, because you'll see a lot of something in white or something in yellow, and that's directly from heraldry. White is silver and gold. Yellow is gold. So like Green Bay Packers, green and gold. But it's, I mean, obviously the Bengals are blue and orange, so sometimes complementary. But the point is high contrast for team colors. High contrast. Start with the main color and work everything else from that main color. Yep, there you go, Brigella. Ta-da! It's the magic van. This is my superpower. Ta-da! So, all right. Yeah, I was going to paint. Let's get to painting. Oops. Anne's not painting very effectively today. We're color theorying instead. All right, so I'm going to rebuild my shadow just so I've got it. So that's going to be like 4 drops of rich leather. And a little, like half a drop of black and brown when I can find it. Where did my black and brown go? There it is. Just a tiny bit because rich leather is so easily overcome. No, my main color is usually not based off the skin tones. Usually I slide the skin tones more into the territory of neutral. Although skin tones are always in orange. So essentially skin tones are orange. They either slide red or yellow or neutral. So you can always think about that if you want. But most skin tones will read as a neutral on the model, not an active color. Because her fur is a definite, like, it's a definite color more so than like most of us see skin tones. Like it's definitely got some golden color on it and yellow tones. So I wanted to treat it as a main color, but I do not normally choose to treat skin tones as a main color. There are exceptions. But furry animals, like when I'm doing fur, I always choose it as a main color. So when we're doing, you know, these guys have very similar fur tones. Although you can see the bunny is more yellow, I hope, than Noli. But yeah, so on Noel, she definitely is a red, yellow, green scheme. But yeah, I normally do not count my skin tone as an overt color. Instead, I will choose a color that kind of goes, usually I start with a hair color, to be honest. And if I choose a neutral for a hair color, then I'll go to the next color. Or I'll like if I choose a brunette, like if I'm going with a brunette with like tanned skin, I will start to at that point count that as orange because not only the skin but the hair counts as orange on the color wheel. Browns are muted oranges unless they slide really heavily toward yellow as rich leather does or toward red as ruddy leather does. So at that point I would say yes, orange is one of my colors. So the other color obvious is blue, or I could go with a split complementary or a triadic or whatever. I tend to like triadic color schemes. I think they're one of the more like kind of photogenic and fun color schemes. So red, yellow, blue, or green, orange, purple is where I tend to go. A lot of painters are like me. Right, that is true. Like, she's got a lot of fur, especially down here on the legs, where normally we just have boots. More than, it's like, usually where skin tone does come in pretty heavily is when I'm looking at light-dark contrast. So if I'm painting a model with dark skin, then I'm going to work with mid and light colors for a lot around it to give contrast. And if I'm working with light skin, then we'll work with more dark and mid colors around a light skin to bring it out. So in a lot of ways, the actual color of the skin is going to kind of default in my head to like a muted orange, and I'm just going to look more at is it light or dark, and then that's going to tell me how to work with it. All right, so I've got my shadow color mixed up. I'm mixing my mid. I'm going to put a little bit of blonde hair in the middle of this rich leather. So there's my dark with the black and brown. Need to put a little extra on this, but that's a weird one. Boom. Yeah, Karniko, that's at the point where you say, well, these are the colors you gave me, and since you didn't pay me to do a color theory assessment on your model. There, that's nice. That nice golden brown color that I like for our hair, for her mid color. A little bit more water, I think. I would totally have said that too. Because you know what? When you're doing work for free for your players, they need to be reminded every once in a while that you're doing work for free and they need to not take you for granted. Pretty sure I would have punched your players at some point, Karniko, with some of the crap you say they say to you. I'm like, oh, it's on. You're going to paint your own next time. Oh, dear. I used to paint, like, a long, long time ago when I was feeling nice. I would paint, like, a model for my friends every once in a while. But I realized very quickly that I was being taken advantage of and that people were starting to take it for granted. And they don't mean to do it. I mean, they're your friends, right? But when you get something for free, you tend to devalue it. And you don't realize how much it's really worth. There we go. So I'm mixing, took a bit of that and moved it over and added more blonde hair. And now I'm going to make a straight up blonde hair puddle with some bleached linen in it. I guess my point is that it's great to be nice and it feels great to help your friends, but also be aware that it does sometimes, people will devalue it without even like realizing that they are. And if you point it out, they'll feel super bad, but it's just something that tends to be a thing. So that's something to be aware of. All right, I'm gonna do a little bit, making kind of a pentad here in case you haven't noticed. We're making a 5-color succession based around rich leather and blonde hair. And now I'm gonna go up with some of this and bleached linen for our highest highlight. And I go up with bleached linen or linen white because with animals, I don't want a pure white usually. I tend to go for the muted white. Yeah, after I stopped painting for that one friend, he groused a lot. Like, it was my fault that I wasn't painting for him anymore. Like, it was my fault he wasn't getting free minis anymore. You know, it's just like, yeah. It taught me a lesson. It taught me a lesson. It was, I was in my early 20s at that point. And I very much wanted to be liked and to have, you know, my friends like me. And so I just realized that maybe that wasn't what it was about. There we go. All right. And now I have my triad or my pentad. So just to recap what mixing a pentad does for you is essentially gives you your core triad. And this is a lot like the blonde hair triad. You could probably just sub in the blonde hair triad. You'd be very close. Or maybe this is more like the blonde hair triad out here. But it gives you a mid-tone triad. But then for your shadow areas, it also gives you a shadow triad. And for your highlight areas, it gives you a highlight triad. So it's a way, pentads are a way to start thinking about how your colors should vary if you're painting an area that's facing upward toward a light source or on the underside of something. Away and take a running jump at yourself. Yeah. I mean, I think most people can only benefit by being called out. I mean, accountability is a thing, and sometimes you have to point it out. Yeah, I mean, if, and I don't think I ever would, but if I painted a model for free for somebody for a game, I think at this point it would be okay, but I get to choose your colors. And it's going to be fast. Alrighty. let us get going then. Yeah, so we've got her chest area. Now, animals usually have lighter undersides and lighter paws. So let's get our reference photo, shall we? Hold on. Hair. Images. Luckily, I picked one that's right up at the front of there. There's our hair. So you can see how, actually, he's pretty uniform. His underside is definitely lighter. So we definitely have a light transition at the chest here. You can see the light fur on the chest. And you can see that the back is generally darker than the sides. And the paws are a little bit lighter than this color here at the sides. So yeah, the paws are a tiny bit lighter, although they get a little dark here on the back. So we could go either way. We could actually make the legs lighter and then make the feet dark, like a Siamese almost. Or we can essentially just look at a picture and kind of extrapolate from it. Kind of figure, okay, well, I could go here, or I could go, I could make the paws dark. I could do whatever. So that's one thing you look at. The other thing we need to look at in this picture is the fur direction. It's really good for fur direction. You can see that the fur is growing at a diagonal down the sides of the legs. So when we get to these legs, we're going to be doing the same thing. We're going to have the fur growing at a diagonal down the side of the leg. And usually the fur is kind of a fan. It'll come down kind of straight in the middle, and then it'll go off to the both sides. So the more animal pictures and animals you look at to look at fur direction, the more you'll see that happening, where it fans out from, say, a dorsal point or a point on the front of the leg. You can actually see it changing direction right here. So you can see it coming down. It goes kind of off this way, and you can almost see it going off in the other direction as well. So, and it's more straight here at the bottom. See? So fur direction, when you're doing a fur texture on animals, is just so important for realism. But it pretty much grows straight down the front. Sometimes it'll come around and kind of get a little, like a hair lick, a crest. We're going to keep a deep shadow under her chin because it just makes sense. But her collarbones are shown here, so we're going to bring those out. So I am actually making a dramatic shadow underneath her chin, even though that area would probably be lighter. And then I'll bring up the collarbones in the chest area. So we'll have to put in the description on this video that there was a color theory regarding rabbits. That way I can refer people when they pop in later streams and ask why we're doing these colors. You can refer them back to the other stream. Now on 28s, if it's an area with really short fur, sometimes I won't even suggest the fur. Out here on her chest, I don't have a lot of room, so I'm not going to worry so much about fur direction. I'm going to worry more about color and highlighting. But anywhere like on her face here, where we do have longer fur, or on the ears, then I'm definitely going to focus on making sure that I have a logical fur direction going on. Trying to bring up some of that color. Just got a couple of tendons. Her neck's really short, so there's not a lot of room. Yeah, I was gonna say ex-player for sure. right. Just adding some extra water to the lighter colors here because they have a lot of white in them. I added a lot of that bleached linen, and bleached linen has a very high white pigment load. It's very pale, as you can see. That means that more water has to come in here if I want more of a smooth look to the fur. And I have to think about my highlights here. Let me grab actually some water and thin this out. And I actually want to go up all the way to bleached linen, I think, also here. So I'm going to go all the way up to bleached linen. That's a 6 color progression. And, you know, that might be overkill, but I like having that off-white, that really high off-white. Oh, Comcast problems? I'm not seeing it on my end. Is it, Quindy? I haven't looked at speed tests today. It's not, OBS is not telling me that it's dropping frames. But that doesn't mean anything, because OBS. So I'm going to start bringing up this color toward the center. And I'm going to fill in that gap there with that dark line. One blip. It's threatening us. It's like, get painting. Quit talking. This is supposed to be a painting stream. I'm just going to muck around a little bit. Wet blend. Oop, a little bit too much there. A little bit too much water too. Bloop. So that didn't work. Pull out the water. I got a little bit too much water in that area. You go back and try that again. Essentially I'm painting a kind of a thinned, lighter color over that. Over her chest there, the split, because it's too dramatic. There, that's better. More subtle. Bye, Brigala. Have fun. Lots of meetings today for everybody. People were downright whimsical earlier. You guys are like, it was like everybody extra caffeinated or something for this day. So I'm going to go back and forth. There's very little room here on her chest. But I want to blend it nicely. I want it to look good. So that's coming along. I don't want this big dark gap here. So I'll work on blending it in just a little bit. That's a little better. Hello, 8-bit. Right, yeah. When you're retired, you no longer have to worry about all those meetings. This is true. Just minimizing that dip in the chest. I just decided I didn't like it much. There we go. Can keep a little shadow, and I may reintroduce a little bit. But more likely I'll build up my light contrast to re-emphasize instead of putting a dark shadow there, a darker shadow there. I don't know if it was the midweek hustle. I think it was just people being like a little bit wacky today. Wacky Wednesday. Because yesterday everybody was like stone quiet. Like it was like painting for the undead. It was like Zambies sent a bunch of her followers over, and all I had like in my chat were zombies. Everybody was super busy. All right, so now I'm just highlighting a little bit more toward the bottom there where that, and the reason I wanted to block this in before we did the blouse is because this area is right up against the blouse, and I'm going to want to do the same on the arms. I'm going to want to get a feel for how light or dark that area is before I block in my exact color for the blouse. Because how light or dark I make the blouse is going to be affected by the fur color. Hey, Crazy Moo. Oh, I see. Yes, the meetings. Yeah, I'm trying to figure out like how to kind of balance my life a little bit better these days myself. I used to spend a lot of time on stuff for my nonprofit, my dog club, but these days it's like I find myself resenting it more and more because I still do an awful lot for them, and I'm like, maybe somebody else needs to take over some of this stuff. But although we have some very enthusiastic kind of up-and-coming members, I feel like I don't know that we have enough people for me to hand off a lot. We'll see. All right, so there I'm about where I want to be with the chest. The paint started to bead over the wash, or the wash started to bead over part of the mini. Polly. Dog health questions. Honestly, your breeder or your vet is going to be probably a better source, Robin, but I mean, it's as bad as doing human health researches, right? It's like you might get the answer to a question, or you might get a lot of conjecture that just makes you really nervous. I think looking up health online is always kind of a gamble. The wash beaded over the previous painted mini. Were you using just water to build your wash, or were you using sealer? And where did my sealer go? It's probably hiding out here in plain sight. Yes, there it is. Just water. Yeah, that sometimes will happen. If you handled the surface especially, then I could see that it might bead up. If the surface got any handling at all, like your finger oils can be enough to do that with a just water wash. It does kind of, how much were you thinning your wash too? But I always make washes with, by mixing in medium or sealer. Polly, there's a free video on my YouTube, Painting Big YouTube. And it's about using washes. And then there's a mixing your own washes video. There's two. So you may want to go give that a look, just to make sure your application and your thinness or thickness of your wash is kind of on. The mixing your own washes one might be better. I find that medium prevents beating up. Otherwise, it is possible for, there we go. Quindy with the link. Quindy linked to my YouTube. If you go there, you'll see that it's Miniature Painting Fundamentals. There are 3 videos so far. And they're all, the last one, the mixing your own wash or building your own wash, is a little bit longer because I have to explain a lot more, but hopefully it'll be useful for you. And like I said, they're free. Go watch them. That's why they're out there. It can happen. If there's been any handling of the mini, when if your fingers are naturally greasy, mine tend to be a bit dry, but I have seen that happen. I have seen the beading happen. You could just wash the mini and try again, like just with a little bit of warm soapy water, a little bit of dish soap and some warm water. But if you're painting on bones, then I wouldn't. Absolutely would not. Because bones, I have seen the paint want to slough off underwater. So be careful. But yeah, I mean, the real easy answer is always use a little bit of sealer to build your wash in addition to replace a little bit of your water, and then you won't get that surface tension problem. Painting on resin. That was my next question, is what kind of, like, you know, what material and did you prime it? So if it's resin, I assume you primed it. Yeah. Yeah, and it's less likely, resin is a lot less likely to have a reaction. Like some bones materials, if you use certain primers on them, that would actually have a chemical reaction that might cause that. But I mean, resins, almost all primers go for resin as far as I know. So it's more likely just that your wash is real thin and you could probably use some extra stuff in it to make it bind together, or you could lightly wash your mini if you wanted to. That's up to you. I actually haven't ever had to wash them because I always mix my washes with sealer. But I don't use a lot of washes either, so. But beading essentially is what happens when your surface tension is too great and you don't have anything there to break it. And it can also happen if your surface that you're painting over has any residual oils on it, like I said, from handling fingers or hands. I've seen beading happen also over certain primers if they are added, if the primer's put on a really thick coat and then it's allowed to cure for a very long time, it can kind of be resistant. Yeah, I mean, depending on the ratio of paint to water in your wash, maybe your wash is just too thin. I don't know what ratios you're using, but if you watch the building your own wash video, it'll give you good ratios for Master Series paint. If you're not using MSP, then you know, it'll talk a little bit about using other paints, but okay, let's get some of these paws highlighted. Much pause for thought. Yeah, I'm lucky just because my hands are technically very dry, which isn't terribly lucky in the winter. But it's very good when handling figures. I'm just going to bring up the highlight on the paw here. My paint's pretty thin, but a little bit thicker here for the base coat color. So I want to just bring up this area slowly. That's right, she has only 3 fingers, and that top part is actually the top part's actually the top of the bag, so I'm going to actually paint over that with a white to remind me that this is a different surface. But yeah, if it hasn't happened before and you aren't doing anything different, Polly, then I would think that it's possibly that the surface got a little bit too handled or something, or your wash is maybe a little bit too thin. Or both. But the basic why of a surface of a wash beading or paint beading up on a surface is either the surface itself is repellent or the surface tension in the wash is not broken enough. Adding a little bit of flow improver can also break surface tension, but if your paint is very thin, then you may run into that issue. Although I don't like with glazes and anything, so I'm more inclined to think it's a surface issue. But I don't know which paint you're using either, so as far as the wash goes or the main paint. All right, just bringing up the fingers here a little bit. Getting this more in a mid zone, kind of like it is in the darker areas of her face. Then I'll bring in my highlights. I'm going to do the other arm as well. My brush stroke is going to be in the direction the paint or the fur would grow. So this arm, her arm is she's carrying underarm here, so underhand. So my fur direction is going to be a little different. And I probably won't be able to see this texture, but if any of it remains, then it will be going in the correct direction. Now this is kind of a shadow area because she's holding it underarm here, and this down here is definitely a shadow. So I won't go above a certain color down here because it is in shadow. Mixture of MSP and GW. Paint won't bead because you put too much on usually. Like that should be the opposite. That's weird. And the feet. Like too much on is actually how like putting more on is how I get over problems with paint beading if I'm like painting over bones. Usually if I use slightly thicker paint and I put a little more on, I can get past that. But it also depends on how much you're thinning your paint. Yeah, it's just there's a lot of things, there's a lot of factors there to unpack that could be contributing. Now, as this area gets up under her leg, I'm going to stop bringing my highlights up, and I'm going to keep that shadow. In fact, I'm going to add my shadow, add a bit of a shadow color back in here. But yeah, I'd actually have to see the model, see your application, like then I could troubleshoot more effectively. Everything else is just guesswork. Once again, I'm using kind of it's kind of a fan. Start here, go to there, go to there. So kind of a fanning out brush stroke on the leg here. That's how the fur would grow. And not a lot of that texture is going to remain, but at least it's there. So if I want to accentuate it, I can. Sure, no problem, Polly. Do watch those videos. Hopefully they will help. And then little fur on the toes, which we haven't decided whether to take the feet light or dark or just keep them the same. I'm inclined to either make them light or dark. Like I think I do want a little extra contrast here with the hands and the feet. I just haven't decided whether I need them to go lighter or darker yet. And I may hold off that for quite a while, actually. I may hold off on that decision until I get some of the other colors blocked in on the figure, and then it'll tell me whether I need to go lighter or darker on the feet and the hands to get more contrast. So there are definitely some decisions that I just hold off making until I feel like I have more information. So you can see how much lighter that took that foot and more golden as well. Now, if I look at how the light falls over here, you can see there's quite a dark shadow that comes down here from this knee. This leg is forward more, so you get a little less, but you get more down here. So I'm going to block in that shadow with our shadow color. And once again, just kind of blocking in my first level of highlight, which is really more of a mid-tone. Bringing up the fur a little bit. And technically the inside of this leg is also in shadow. So we could block that in darker than the surrounds. And blocking in shadow, where if you do want to keep a dramatic shadow on the figure, I mean, it's a good idea to block it in at the beginning while you're just looking kind of at a flat color. And having it be blocked in should remind you, it will help to remind you that, hey, this is in shadow, so I need to keep it darker. Same thing with the back of the leg here, where it curves under. You can definitely see when I put her up here with the big ring light shining on her, you can see that there's a shadow back here. And definitely all back on the back of this leg. And you're not really going to see texture in here. Like, texture normally doesn't show up a lot in the shadows unless there's a lot of bounce light. You have to look really close to see texture in shadows outside. Tends to just show to our eyes as a massive dark. So I'll block in those darker, you can see those darker areas. And again, on the inside here of the leg is probably also dark. So I'm going to mask those in with a big shadow. Nice dark. And then I can bring up my highlight where it would be up here on the back of the leg and outside of the leg, which are definitely coming out, so they're going to catch the light more. And that brings that highlight up and that light coming down the side of the leg, which we're not going to bring up that much, but we do want it to be up a bit from the shadow. All right, and then the paw down here is going to get light. But yeah, looking forward to doing that Copper NMM Triad Color Workshop PDF. I like that Triad a lot, so if this gives you guys a way to, you know, utilize it better and sell some more of it, that'll make me happy. I always was afraid it would get canceled, and tarnished copper is such a useful color. There we go, got our paws. Need this hand up here. There we go. If I'm doing a furry animal and I know that there's fur covering a surface, I will generally do like kind of a stippling stroke for building my highlights on the very small areas, even like fingers, as opposed to a smooth, more of a line highlight or a blended highlight for skin, just to differentiate the two and just suggest a tiny bit of texture. A lot of it may not be visible till you get close up to it, but it still will kind of suggest a softer highlight. I need to text Christine and let her know we're painting this lady on our stream. Oh, I see a bit of bones material that I did not take off. Need to grab my knife. Got my base coat colors out, so. And I just changed out my knife blade, so I need to be really careful, because it's sharp. Did I get it? That might have gotten it. I'm pretty fearless about applying knives to models, even after I've started painting them. It's because at this at this state, it's so much easier to clean up than waiting. When you notice something, correct it right away. All right, let's get the back of her ears. Now, I kind of showed you guys how, again, it's kind of a fan brush stroke, where it starts out like it kind of goes straight down the center of long areas, like the back of an arm or the front of a foreleg in animals. The hair tends to grow straight down, but as it goes to either side, it spreads out to either side, kind of like you're painting a feather. So if you imagine that this ear is a feather, that gives you the brush stroke that you should be using for the most part to suggest texture on it. So I'll just do my straight first, and then I'll start to build out. And again, this texture will become more apparent as I build up more and more highlights. This is just the beginning. Now, if you want this hair to be very short, make sure you're using a shorter brush stroke as opposed to a very long brush stroke. You will definitely notice a difference in how it looks. More important probably as we start building in lighter colors, but I just like to get into the habit so I don't go on autopilot and paint it using a longer brush stroke and end up with an effect that I don't want. This is specific to like more coarse fur. If you're working with a very smooth coated animal, say like something like a pointer dog or one of the hounds with a really short coat, or horses that are not in winter coat but are in summer coat, where it's very short and sleek, then using a long brush stroke actually can work better because the coat is just so short you're not even going to see the hair texture. You're just going to see the overall effect. So, but with things like rabbits, they have that kind of medium short coat, so you get a little bit of texture, so that's why I'm doing it this way. This is where it helps to study your animals. Yeah, like a pit bull. Exactly. Like that short, hard coat. They call it a hard coat. And that's because usually you don't even feel the coat. You just feel the hardness of the muscle right under it. Things like red-boned coonhounds, pit bull terriers, boxers, Vizslas, and other hunting breeds with that short coat, like pointers. Those you can use a very long brush stroke on and just build up the general highlights more than the texture of the fur. And if you look at pictures of horses, especially horses in the sunlight, do I have that book here? Yeah, I do. Here, I'll show you what I mean. Let me just finish doing the fur base here. And that's why horses, when people paint them, are typically like seem very solid colored. It's because the hairs are so short and the coat is so hard and they're not shaggy. All right, so let's get that and stay for a minute. See if I can get this book out. If I can't get this book out very easily, then we'll table it, but there we go. Looking for a good sunshiny horse here. Let's see, is that a good sunshiny horse? Not really. Kinda. Okay, so there's a good sunshiny horse on the back cover. So like where you see the highlights on the hindquarters here, I guess I need a lighter, brighter horse. Is that a good one? Kind of like that. But on this, you don't see, especially if it was miniature sized, you wouldn't see a lot of the texture. You'd see the general highlights. You can see them kind of the way that they go on the fur. Animals with really short coats tend to have that overall effect rather than you being able to pick out individual hairs. I know there's a couple of horses in here that are perfect, but I'll have to look and maybe get back to it. Some of them are shaggy, so that doesn't help, but you get the idea. Very short-coated animals, you tend to see the muscle masses highlight more than individual hairs. All right, have fun, Thormel. It always is. I always like having these big picture books with lots of animal photos in them with good photography, so that I can see like the nuance of colors. I also, as you know, use a lot of online photos if it's an animal that I don't have a book on. But I do have a lot of wildlife photography books. I also have a lot, because I enjoy it, I also have a lot of wildlife art books. So the back of her tail is going to be quite light. So I'm going to be bringing that up a lot. But for now, we'll just start with this starting color, because it's also got a shadow underneath it. So yeah, looking at wildlife art and how painters handle the challenges of fur and animal color and character is always instructive. Plus, wildlife art is beautiful, if I dare say so. So I have books of wildlife art, and I have books of just photography of the animals that I like to paint the most. So I'm going to try to get close enough for you guys to see this. Let's see if you can see it. Can you see the tiny bit of suggested texture there? Let me see if I can get really, really in focus. Maybe you can see a little bit of it. I obviously need to break up that shadow more. In person, you can actually see it. The camera just fails us a little bit at this. There you go. You can see it. See the tiny bit of texture. Yeah, the Akaltek. Yeah, that's the, yeah. Yeah, they're actually metallic. They actually look metallic. Like, there's one other breed like they are, the Akaltek. I don't remember how to pronounce it, but yeah, they look like when they're a golden chestnut, they look like a metallic gold horse. Like, it's insane. And they can be silver or gold, or they come in all sorts of colors. But the gold is probably the most popular. But yeah, I used to love that horse breed when I was a kid because it looked so funky. I might even have a picture. But if you Google it, you can find it. So when you bring in any highlight colors, if you keep on going in that hair direction, you can get a beautiful subtle texture on 28s for when you have big areas to cover, like these big ears. But, all right. Let's keep going on the paws. Akaltek or Akalteke, Akhal, and then a separate word, Teke. They look metallic when they're the right color. The gold and silver colors. And the reason they do that, by the way, is because the coat is so short. So really short. You sometimes see Arabians with the same kind of look, but not as pronounced or consistent as that breed. You can tell they're descended from the same stock, though. All right, so we're going to go with our middle color here. We were using just our kind of this. We're going to go to this, which is our, like 4 drops of rich leather and a big drop of blonde hair or so, maybe a couple drops of blonde hair. Mostly once I figured out the main 2 colors I wanted to use, which was the rich leather and the blonde hair, I just started mixing the colors until I got a nice succession, and I didn't so much pay attention to ratios anymore. As long as you are only using 2 main colors, it's very easy to reconstruct your recipes close enough so that it doesn't even make a difference. Where you shouldn't even worry if you're a little bit off, because probably no one will notice. And again, I'm using kind of a stipple tone here for the highlight, just to suggest like there's a little bit of texture there on her paw. Yeah. Yeah, they're gorgeous horses. They do look like they're metallic. So if you want to paint a horse in NMM, just look at that breed. Now I'm going to start kind of suggesting a little bit of the finger bones on the back of the hand. Often I'll fuzz this out, especially on younger characters. On older models or monsters, you can bring out these tendons and make them really distended, overemphasize them. I like to suggest them a little bit on the back of the hand, at least where they lead into the knuckle, even for younger characters, and then I'll just generally kind of map them out on the rest of the hand, blend them in a bit more. So exciting. Yesterday, more Kiri great-great-grandpuppies were born. And this is the super special breeding because it's a cross between Kiri's great-granddaughter and a Belgian Tervuren. 4 puppies were successfully born. 2 boys and 2 girls. They're already adorable. Terrifying. Define terrifying. Like terrifying to paint, terrifying in subject matter. Like made me like just not want to paint it because it was terrifying. Like the thought of painting it was terrifying. Subject. I don't gravitate toward like ugly or gross subjects or scary ones, so I don't know that I ever have. Not to completion. I can't remember. Because it's not a genre I like. So like a horror subject would just like not even appeal to me unless I was forced to paint it. And I can't think of it like any real like horrific types. Like it's not Reaper's thing. Like Kingdom Death is where that stuff is kind of at. Where it's like just truly terrifying and horrifying. And there are just elements of total creepiness. But Reaper doesn't tend to go for that. So I don't know that I ever have painted anything that's like that. Yeah, Nurgle doesn't appeal to me. Even though the new models are beautiful, they're beautiful in kind of a sick way. And that just isn't... Like, this is closer than I've ever been to wanting to paint a Nurgle model. Because the sculpts are so gorgeous. But it's still gross. So... it still doesn't quite appeal. So now we got a highlight on the top of the arm here. But we're more of a mid-tone as we move down, and we're definitely on a shadow as we go down to the bottom. That's where we want to be. So for a lot of this, I want to point out, for a lot of this, I'm holding these not only just for highlight colors or highlighted areas, but also for light colors, like the area of her chest and her face and her eye. When we went up, then I'm mostly using my top Triad for those. But since right now I'm going kind of neutral on her limbs, I'm keeping more in my normal, like my mid-tone Triad with a little bit of the shadow block in. So I'm more in here. So I'm definitely not just using these to paint highlight, mid-tone, and shadow areas, but I'm also focusing on when the area of the model would actually be lighter in color as far as the fur. I'm definitely switching for that as well. Yeah. Kingdom of Death, most models just kind of like make me go, but there are a few nice ones. The characters can be pretty nice. There's a mini that David keeps like being impatient at me to paint that he handed me, which is a bard, a female bard from Kingdom Death Monster. And she's very pretty. She's in the other room where I'd show you guys. She's from one of their like special limited edition packets, like boxes. Like Shadows of Death limited boxes, I think. And her base is still gross because it's covered with intestines and faces. But the model's pretty. But yeah, some people really love painting macabre and bloody and exploded and nurgly kind of things, and that's cool. There are a couple of Kingdom Death monsters that just have such like beautiful elements on the sculpt that I'm tempted to paint them, even though they're kind of horrifying. Yes, Pendrick is always late. Oh, wow. Like, it's already late. Okay, well, I'm going to finish this thumb, and then we're going to call it. I just realized how late it was. It was like, wee-doo-doo-doo. Just hanging out. This is what happens when I do my Saturday show, and I don't have a Quindy to remind me. Is that I end up going over 2 hours or more. All right, so we did actually get one layer of highlights up on all of the brown fur. We got some nice fur texture done on the backs of the ears. We were blocking in some shadow areas with our dark color, areas that are definitely going to be in shadow based on how our model looks when we put it under a directional light. And then we started bringing up the hands with a bit more of a higher highlight. Once I have all this blocked in, we also chose our first main color for the clothes. So for the blouse, we're going to be going with violet red. And from there, we're going to be figuring everything out from there, pretty much based on our starting colors. So we will. I've already made a note that that is our color for the blouse. So we'll figure out how we're going to change that color to make it look good next to our hair. Probably next time, actually. I'll probably take a break. Might take a break from fur a little bit and do the blouse. Now that I've got the color kind of blocked in on those paws, I feel a little bit better about it. Oh, Luca wasn't ready. For once I am not holding up the Alpaca Nation? What? What? All right, well then. Well, I need to go and take a walk and get lunch ready. So I must go. For once I'm done before Luca has started. So that's what we did today, guys. Tomorrow, tune in again. Maybe we'll do some NMM chainmail tomorrow. How do you guys feel about that? NMM chainmail, anybody? NMM chainmail? We did the leather on the club, and I like it a lot now. So yeah, let's actually block in some of these remaining white areas on the ogre so we can really get a sense of how things look, because that white sackcloth is going to look a lot whiter once we get rid of this. So yeah, let's do that. Let's do some NMM chainmail tomorrow. And I will let Luca get on with things for this stream. Thank you all for tuning in, and I hope you have a lovely rest of your day. Yeah, we'll see you again tomorrow morning. Thanks, Quindy, for everything. Thanks, everybody.